Today I'd like to spotlight Exodus chapter 4, verse number 10 from the New Living Translation, where we find these words. But Moses pleaded with the Lord, I'm not very good with words. I've never been, and I'm not now. Even though you have spoken to me, I get tongue-tied, and my words get tangled. Well, as we get started with this new work week and day, I want to use for a theme this week on the heels of Father's Day, lessons learned from my fathers. Today, specifically, I want to use for a thought and theme, living and leading with limitations. That's exactly what we see here in this passage. If you know the story of Moses, you know he had a very interesting life. From the time he was a baby boy, he had a hit on his life because God had a purpose for his life. And as he grows, he has to flee from Egypt because he took matters into his own hands, trying to fulfill the promise and purpose of God, only to find years later, many believe decades later, that God won't let him go when there's purpose. So in spite of his limitations, God still wants to use him to be a leader. What we find as a valuable lesson from fathers, and what I've found from the fathers that have been in my life, is that you can lead and live even though you're still learning because you have a limitation. We all do. Part of the reason I believe Moses had this protest, as New Living Translation says it, to God when God shows up to use him, to speak about using him rather, is that because he knew he had limitations. He said, I don't speak well. Matter of fact, I get tongue-tied. And knowing the history of that time and going before the Pharaoh or a king, you would need to be polished. You would need to be professional. You would need to be able to present. But Moses says, I've got limitations. But here's what he also knew. Even though he knew he had limitations, he says, God, you spoke to me. And here's what I want you to know today, that whether you're a father, you're a coach, you're a mentor, or you're someone in someone's life, we all have limitations. God never asked us to be perfect. He does ask us to bring our limitations to him and still see the purpose that he has for us. So my question to you today is, what limitation is causing you to push back from leading and begin to be a person that God is using for those who've been placed in your life for you and I to be an influence in? And then I want to ask you this final question. If God can use Moses, why do you think he can't use you and I? Let's make it a great day and week and have a great one. Lord willing, we'll talk with you next time. Live and lead, even though you have limitations.